The first time the Tvash ambassador walked into the United Nations Assembly, the room fell silent. It wasn't just the alien's towering, insectoid form, or the way its chitin shimmered under the artificial lights like living obsidian. No, it was the desperation radiating from it, palpable even across species barriers. The Tvash were a proud race, known for their technological prowess and their sprawling empire that spanned dozens of star systems. For them to come to Earth, hat in hand, was unheard of. "My people are dying," the ambassador began, its voice a series of clicks and hums that were translated into English by a small device on its thorax. "Not from war, not from famine, but from life itself. We are too many. Our cities stretch across continents. Our ships crowd the skies. Resources dwindle. Space is no longer infinite for us." The room stirred uneasily. The Tvash had always been distant, aloof in their dealings with humanity. That they were here now meant their situation was dire. "We have tried sterilization programs, relocation efforts, even voluntary euthanasia," the ambassador continued. "But our population grows still. We need a solution." And that's how it began. Humanity's strangest contract in history. The Tvash didn't want Earth's resources or technology. They wanted humans themselves. Not as slaves or soldiers, but as problem solvers for a crisis so vast it defied comprehension. The terms were simple. Humans would be hired to manage overpopulation on Tvash Prime, their homeworld and the epicenter of their crisis. The details were left vague at first, but humanity was nothing if not adaptable. Governments and corporations leapt at the chance to gain favor with one of the galaxy's most advanced civilizations. At first, humanity tried all the usual tricks: urban planning algorithms, resource redistribution systems, even cultural campaigns to promote smaller families among the Tvash. But nothing worked. Their biology was relentless. They reproduced at rates that made rabbits look celibate. Then someone no one knows who had an idea so audacious it bordered on absurdity: cigarettes. It started as a joke in some forgotten boardroom. "What if we just let them smoke themselves to death?" someone quipped. But the more they thought about it, the more it made sense. Humans had long since banned tobacco on Earth due to its health risks. But here was a species with no concept of smoking and no immunity to its addictive allure. The plan was pitched to the Tvash government as a cultural exchange program. Humans would introduce tobacco as a recreational activity, a harmless indulgence to ease the stresses of overcrowded life on Tvash Prime. The aliens accepted eagerly, desperate for anything that might alleviate their societal pressures. At first, uptake was slow. The Tvash physiology was vastly different from humans, and it took some time to refine tobacco products that appealed to their unique senses and biochemistry. But once they figured it out, oh boy, within a decade, smoking had become a cultural phenomenon on Tvash Prime. Entire industries sprang up around it. Designer cigarettes tailored to different castes and regions, elaborate smoking rituals that became status symbols among the elite. The Tvash loved it, not just for the act itself, but for the sense of individuality it provided in their overcrowded hive-like society. And then came the side effects. Tvash biology turned out to be highly susceptible to nicotine addiction, and even more susceptible to lung diseases caused by prolonged exposure to smoke. Mortality rates began to climb steadily. At first, no one noticed. After all, in a world of trillions, what were a few 100,000 deaths? But as years passed and millions succumbed to smoking-related illnesses, the population curve finally began to flatten. By year 10 of the program, the Tvash government called an emergency meeting with Earth's representatives. "You have done what we could not," the ambassador said solemnly. Its once shimmering chitin was now dull and cracked, a side effect of its own two-pack-a-day habit. "Our population is stabilizing at last." The human delegation exchanged uneasy glances. They had succeeded beyond their wildest expectations. But at what cost? Entire generations of Tvash were now hooked on a product designed explicitly to kill them slowly. "We thank you," the ambassador continued, oblivious to, or perhaps indifferent toward, the moral quandary hanging in the air. "Your services are no longer required." And just like that, humanity's contract with the Tvash ended. But Earth wasn't done yet. In secret meetings held far from prying eyes and antennae, human corporations had already begun planning their next move. The tobacco trade on Tvash Prime had proven wildly profitable, so much so that pulling out now seemed unthinkable. Besides, there were other planets in the Tvash Empire facing similar overpopulation crises. For humanity, this wasn't just about solving an alien problem anymore. It was about opportunity. Where others saw ethical dilemmas, humans saw markets waiting to be tapped. As Earth's representatives boarded their ships back home, they carried with them not just gratitude from an alien race, but something far more valuable: leverage. The galaxy had underestimated humanity once again, and now it would pay dearly for that mistake. Because if there was one thing humans excelled at beyond survival, it was turning chaos into profit. The return journey to Earth was filled with a mix of triumph and introspection for the human delegation. They had achieved what many thought impossible, yet the ethical ramifications weighed heavily on some. However, the allure of newfound wealth and influence in the galactic community was too tempting to ignore. Back on Earth, the success of the Tvash operation sparked a frenzy among corporations and governments alike. The tobacco companies, once vilified at home, were now hailed as pioneers of a new kind of interstellar commerce. Their executives became celebrities overnight, their stock prices soaring to unprecedented heights. In boardrooms across the globe, plans were hatched to expand this model to other overpopulated worlds within the Tvash Empire. The logic was simple: if it worked once, it could work again. And so, emissaries were dispatched to distant planets with offers too enticing for any beleaguered government to refuse. Meanwhile, on Tvash Prime, the cultural shift was profound. Smoking had become an intrinsic part of daily life, woven into the very fabric of society. Despite the growing health crisis, many Tvash saw it as a necessary evil, a small price to pay for their newfound sense of individuality and freedom from overcrowding. Yet not all were content with this arrangement. A burgeoning resistance movement began to form among younger Tvash generations, those who had grown up in the shadow of this human-engineered epidemic. They questioned the wisdom of their elders and sought alternatives to what they viewed as a slow genocide disguised as cultural exchange. The resistance found unlikely allies among certain human factions back on Earth, groups that had long opposed the tobacco industry's practices and now saw an opportunity to right past wrongs. Together, they began smuggling anti-smoking propaganda and cessation tools into Tvash territories, hoping to spark a revolution from within. As tensions simmered beneath the surface, humanity's expansion into other alien markets continued unabated. Each new contract brought its own challenges and adaptations. After all, not every species responded to tobacco in the same way as the Tvash. But human ingenuity knew no bounds when profit was at stake. On one particularly dense world orbiting a red dwarf star, humans introduced a variant of chewing tobacco that doubled as a mild hallucinogen, a perfect fit for a culture that valued spiritual experiences above all else. On another planet where respiratory systems were incompatible with smoke inhalation, they developed nicotine-infused beverages that quickly became all the rage. With each success came more wealth and influence for Earth's corporations, and more scrutiny from those who saw these ventures as exploitative rather than innovative. Debates raged in international forums about humanity's role in this new era of galactic interaction. Were they saviors or opportunists? Visionaries or villains? Amidst this backdrop of moral ambiguity and economic triumph, whispers began circulating about a mysterious figure known only as the broker. Rumored to be a former tobacco executive turned rogue operative, the broker was said to be orchestrating a vast network dedicated to exposing corporate malfeasance across alien worlds. Stories abounded of daring heists where entire shipments of tobacco products vanished overnight, only for their contents to reappear days later as part of massive public bonfires organized by local resistance groups. Some claimed the broker had access to technology far beyond anything humanity possessed. Others insisted it was merely an elaborate hoax perpetrated by rival companies seeking market dominance. Regardless of who or what the broker truly was, their actions added fuel to an already volatile situation. The Tvash government found itself caught between appeasing its human benefactors and quelling internal dissent threatening its stability. Back on Earth, corporate leaders dismissed these disruptions as minor setbacks. mere bumps on an otherwise lucrative road toward interstellar dominance. But behind closed doors, some began questioning whether they had unleashed forces beyond their control, forces that could one day turn against them with devastating consequences. For now, though, humanity remained firmly entrenched at the forefront of this brave new world, a world where commerce transcended borders both terrestrial and celestial, where ethics often took a back seat to ambition, where even something as mundane as smoking could become a tool for shaping destinies across galaxies vast and unknown. And so it went. Humans continued their dance with destiny amidst stars both familiar and foreign, always pushing boundaries further than ever before, always reaching for more, always believing that somehow they would emerge victorious in whatever game they chose to play next. The broker's legend grew with each passing year, a specter haunting the corridors of power, both on Earth and across the Tvash Empire. For every shipment of human-engineered tobacco that reached its destination, another would vanish, replaced by crates filled with anti-smoking literature or strange alien devices designed to neutralize nicotine addiction. The resistance movements on Tvash Prime and beyond began to coalesce into something larger, more organized. What had started as scattered acts of defiance now threatened to become a full-blown insurrection. On Earth, the corporations were feeling the pressure. Profits were still astronomical, but the cost of doing business in alien markets was rising. Security budgets ballooned as companies hired mercenaries and private military contractors to protect their operations from sabotage. Public relations campaigns were launched to counter the growing perception that humanity's interstellar ventures were little more than thinly veiled exploitation. But even as the corporations doubled down, cracks began to appear in their facade of invincibility. Whistleblowers emerged, leaking documents that revealed just how deeply humanity's tobacco trade had infiltrated alien societies. The revelations were damning. Secret agreements with corrupt Tvash officials, deliberate manipulation of alien biochemistry to maximize addiction, and even experiments on non-consenting subjects to refine their products. The fallout was immediate. Protests erupted across Earth, led by coalitions of environmentalists, human rights activists, and anti-corporate agitators. Not in our name became the rallying cry of a movement determined to end humanity's role as galactic profiteers. Governments that had once been complicit in these ventures now found themselves under intense scrutiny, forced to choose between supporting their corporate allies or bowing to public outrage. Meanwhile, on Tvash Prime, the resistance was reaching a tipping point. The broker, or whoever they were, had managed to unite disparate factions under a single banner, the Liberation Front. Their message was simple yet powerful. Humanity's help was a poison, and it was time for the Tvash to take back control of their destiny. The Liberation Front's tactics grew bolder with each passing day. They hacked into government broadcasts to spread their message, staged mass demonstrations in the sprawling megacities, and even launched coordinated attacks on tobacco production facilities. The Tvash government responded with brutal crackdowns, but this only fueled the flames of rebellion. In one particularly audacious move, the Liberation Front managed to hijack a human cargo ship en route to Tvash Prime. The ship's hold was filled with millions of cigarettes destined for distribution across the planet. Instead of destroying them outright, the rebels staged a dramatic event. They broadcast live footage of the cigarettes being jettisoned into space, where they burned up in the atmosphere like falling stars. The spectacle captured the imagination of billions, not just on Tvash Prime, but across the galaxy. It was a symbolic act of defiance against both human exploitation and their own government's complicity. For many Tvash citizens, it marked a turning point, a moment when they realized that change was not only possible but inevitable. Back on Earth, the corporations scrambled to contain the fallout. Shareholders demanded answers as stock prices plummeted. Executives who had once been untouchable now found themselves facing investigations and lawsuits. Some tried to pivot their businesses toward less controversial ventures, but it was too late. Their reputations were irreparably tarnished. And yet, even as humanity's grip on the tobacco trade began to slip, there were those who saw opportunity in chaos. A new breed of entrepreneur emerged, one less concerned with ethics or public opinion, and more focused on finding ways to exploit the galaxy's ever-growing list of crises. These shadowy figures operated in the margins, far from prying eyes. They trafficked in black market goods and services, from unregulated pharmaceuticals to experimental technologies banned by galactic law. For them, the collapse of one industry was merely an invitation to build another, one even more profitable and dangerous than before. As humanity's role in the galaxy continued to evolve, so too did its reputation among alien civilizations. To some, humans were still seen as problem solvers, ingenious and resourceful beings capable of tackling challenges no one else could handle. To others, they were parasites, opportunistic predators who thrived on chaos and suffering. And then there were those who feared humanity for an entirely different reason: its unpredictability. For all their flaws and contradictions, humans had proven time and again that they could adapt to any situation, no matter how dire or complex, and emerge stronger for it. They were a species that thrived on conflict and challenge, always pushing boundaries further than anyone thought possible. The galaxy had learned this lesson once before when humans first ventured beyond their homeworld and carved out a place for themselves among the stars. Now it seemed they were teaching it again, this time not through exploration or diplomacy, but through something far more insidious: commerce. And yet, there was something else stirring beneath the surface, a sense that humanity's story in this new era was far from over, that somewhere out there among countless stars lay opportunities still untapped, challenges still unmet, victories still unclaimed. Because if there was one thing humans knew better than anyone else, it was how to turn adversity into advantage, and how to win when everyone else thought they'd already lost. The galaxy held its breath as tensions reached a boiling point. The Liberation Front's audacious acts of defiance had inspired similar movements on other worlds, each demanding autonomy and an end to human interference. Meanwhile, Earth was embroiled in its own turmoil, with protests escalating into riots and governments teetering on the brink of collapse under the weight of scandal. Then, just when it seemed the situation couldn't grow more volatile, something truly extraordinary happened. A signal, unlike anything humanity or the Tvash had ever encountered, was detected emanating from deep space. It was a complex series of mathematical sequences interspersed with bursts of energy that defied known physics. Scientists scrambled to decode it, their initial skepticism giving way to awe as they realized its implications. This was a message from an advanced civilization far beyond the reach of any known star system. The message was simple yet profound: we are watching. Speculation ran rampant across the galaxy. Who were these mysterious observers? How long had they been monitoring the affairs of lesser civilizations? And most importantly, why were they choosing to reveal themselves now? For many, the timing seemed too coincidental to ignore. As humanity and the Tvash grappled with the consequences of their actions, this new presence introduced a level of uncertainty that no one had anticipated. Were these observers benevolent guardians, or something more sinister? Did they come with offers of assistance or threats of intervention? In response to this revelation, factions within both human and Tvash societies began to shift their focus. Some saw this as an opportunity for redemption, a chance to prove themselves worthy in the eyes of a far superior race. Others viewed it as a dire warning, a sign that their reckless pursuits had drawn unwanted attention from powers beyond their comprehension. On Tvash Prime, the Liberation Front seized upon this development as proof that their cause was just. They argued that only by freeing themselves from human influence could they hope to engage with these enigmatic watchers on equal terms. Their rhetoric struck a chord with many who had grown disillusioned with both their government and their human counterparts. Meanwhile, on Earth, corporate leaders convened emergency meetings to reassess their strategies. The prospect of an unknown civilization scrutinizing their every move sent shivers down spines accustomed to operating without oversight. Some advocated for scaling back operations and adopting a more cautious approach. Others insisted on doubling down, convinced that fortune favored the bold. As debates raged across boardrooms and political arenas alike, another unexpected twist emerged. Reports began filtering in from various worlds about strange phenomena linked to the mysterious signal. On some planets, technology malfunctioned inexplicably. On others, natural disasters occurred with unprecedented frequency and intensity. Scientists struggled to find explanations for these anomalies, but found themselves stymied at every turn by forces they could not understand or measure. It was as if reality itself were being manipulated by an unseen hand, one that cared little for the rules governing lesser beings. In this climate of fear and uncertainty, alliances shifted rapidly as old enemies became new allies against a common threat or opportunity, depending on one's perspective. The galaxy stood at a crossroads unlike any it had faced before, poised between chaos and order, destruction and salvation, ignorance and enlightenment. For humanity, and indeed all sentient life, the stakes had never been higher. And yet, amidst all this upheaval lay potential beyond imagining. Potential not just for survival, but for transformation. Not merely for victory, but for transcendence into realms hitherto unimagined by even the most visionary dreamers among them. Because if there was one thing humans excelled at above all else, it was rising to meet challenges head-on, no matter how daunting or improbable, and emerging triumphant against all odds. The galaxy might be watching, but so too was humanity watching back, with eyes wide open and hearts unafraid, ready once again to seize destiny by its elusive reins, ready once again to write their own story amid stars both familiar and foreign, ready once again to prove that they were not just players in some cosmic game, but masters of it in ways no one else could ever hope to be. As the galaxy grappled with the implications of the mysterious signal, a palpable tension settled over every inhabited world. It was as if the very fabric of existence had shifted, leaving civilizations teetering on the edge of an abyss filled with both dread and possibility. The enigmatic message from the distant watchers had ignited a frenzy of speculation and fear, but it also sparked something else, a renewed sense of purpose. On Earth, amidst the chaos of protests and corporate machinations, a coalition of scientists, philosophers, and visionaries emerged. They called themselves the Horizon Collective, dedicated to understanding the signal and its implications for all sentient life. Drawing on resources from across the globe, they established a sprawling research facility in Antarctica, where they could work in isolation from political pressures and distractions. The Horizon Collective's efforts were driven by a singular goal: to make contact with these mysterious observers and learn their intentions. They believed that understanding this advanced civilization could unlock secrets of the universe that had eluded humanity for millennia. But more than that, they saw it as an opportunity to redefine humanity's place in the cosmos, not as conquerors or exploiters, but as equals in a vast galactic community. Meanwhile, on Tfash Prime, the Liberation Front found itself at a crossroads. The revelation of an advanced civilization watching from afar had galvanized their movement, drawing support from unexpected quarters. Even some within the Tfash government began to question whether their alliance with humanity was truly in their best interest. In secret meetings held deep within the labyrinthine tunnels beneath their capital city, Liberation Front leaders debated their next move. Some argued for immediate action, an all-out assault on human installations to sever ties once and for all. Others advocated for diplomacy, hoping to secure aid from these mysterious watchers in their struggle for autonomy. As these deliberations unfolded, reports continued to pour in from across the galaxy about strange occurrences linked to the signal. In some regions, entire ecosystems seemed to evolve overnight, with species adapting to environmental changes at an unprecedented rate. On other worlds, ancient ruins long thought dormant began to hum with energy, their alien machinery springing to life as if responding to some unseen command. These phenomena only deepened the mystery surrounding the Watchers and their intentions. Were they benevolent overseers guiding lesser civilizations toward enlightenment? Or were they cosmic tricksters manipulating reality for purposes beyond comprehension? Amidst this uncertainty, rumors began circulating about the broker's involvement in these events. Some claimed that this elusive figure had somehow deciphered parts of the signal and was using it to orchestrate acts of sabotage against both human and Tfash interests. Others insisted that the broker was working directly with the Watchers themselves, an intermediary bridging two worlds separated by eons of evolution. Whatever the truth, one thing was clear: the broker's influence continued to grow even as humanity's grip on its interstellar ventures weakened. In response to these challenges, and driven by desperation, Earth's corporations turned to increasingly radical measures in their bid for survival. They began experimenting with technologies once deemed too dangerous or unethical. Genetic modifications designed to enhance adaptability. Artificial intelligences capable of processing data at speeds rivaling those of supercomputers. Even attempts at harnessing dark matter as an energy source. These efforts yielded mixed results, some promising breakthroughs tempered by catastrophic failures. But they underscored humanity's relentless drive toward progress at any cost. As tensions mounted across star systems old and new alike, and as whispers of rebellion spread like wildfire through corridors both terrestrial and celestial, the stage was set for a confrontation unlike any before. One where not just planets or empires hung in balance, but entire paradigms governing existence itself. Because if there was one thing humans understood better than anyone else, it was how to thrive amidst uncertainty, how to find opportunity amidst chaos, how to transform even seemingly insurmountable obstacles into stepping stones toward greatness. And so they pressed forward into uncharted territories, undaunted by shadows cast long upon paths unknown, determined once again not just survive but soar higher than ever before, determined once again not just endure but excel beyond all expectations, determined once again not just play roles assigned by fate, but rewrite scripts anew with hands unshackled by fear or doubt. For this was humanity's moment, a moment when stars aligned and destinies intertwined, a moment when past met future head-on in collision course destined to reshape everything known or imagined, a moment when everything changed forevermore. The galaxy teetered on the precipice of chaos, and humanity stood at the center of it all. The Watcher's signal had not only destabilized the fragile balance between Earth and the Tvash, but had also sent ripples through the very fabric of galactic civilization. Every faction, human, Tvash, and otherwise, scrambled to position themselves in a game whose rules they barely understood. And then, without warning, the Watchers made their next move. The signal changed. What had been a steady stream of mathematical sequences suddenly shifted into something far more complex. Images, sounds, and concepts began flooding into every advanced communication network across the galaxy. It was as if the Watchers were speaking directly to every sentient being at once, bypassing language and culture to implant their message directly into the minds of those who listened. The message was clear. You are unworthy. The reaction was instantaneous and catastrophic. On Tvash Prime, riots erupted as citizens turned on their government, blaming them for inviting humanity's corrupting influence into their society. The Liberation Front seized this moment of chaos to launch a full-scale uprising, targeting human installations and Tvash officials alike. Smoke filled the skies of their megacities as battles raged in the streets. On Earth, panic gripped the population as news of the Watcher's judgment spread. Conspiracy theories flourished, ranging from claims that the Watchers were gods punishing humanity for its sins to fears that they were preparing to annihilate all lesser civilizations. Religious movements sprang up overnight, some preaching repentance while others called for defiance against these cosmic overlords. In corporate boardrooms, fear gave way to desperation. The major players in humanity's interstellar ventures convened in secret to discuss their options. Some advocated for retreat, abandoning their operations on Tvash Prime and other alien worlds to focus on Earth survival. Others argued for escalation, proposing the development of weapons capable of defending against whatever threat the Watchers might pose. But amidst this chaos, one voice rose above the din: the Broker. For years, the Broker had been a shadowy figure operating on the fringes of human and alien society, but now they stepped into the light. In a broadcast that reached every corner of the galaxy, the Broker revealed themselves, not as a single individual, but as a collective of humans and Tvash working together in secret. We have seen what humanity can do when driven by greed, the Broker's voice declared, a blend of human tones and Tvash clicks that resonated with both species. We have seen what happens when power is wielded without wisdom or restraint. But we have also seen what humanity is capable of when it chooses to rise above its basest instincts. The broadcast unveiled evidence that shook both Earth and Tvash Prime to their cores. Proof that the Watcher's signal had not been a warning but a test, a way to measure how civilizations responded to crises of their own making. The broker revealed that they had deciphered parts of the signal long before anyone else, and had used this knowledge to guide their actions over the past decade. The Watchers are not here to destroy us, the broker continued. They are here to see if we can transcend our flaws, to see if we can learn from our mistakes and become something greater than we are. The message struck a chord with billions across both species. On Tvash Prime, Liberation Front leaders called for a ceasefire, urging their followers to join forces with humans in rebuilding their shattered world. On Earth, protests gave way to calls for accountability as citizens demanded an end to corporate exploitation and a new era of cooperation with alien civilizations. But not everyone embraced the broker's vision. On both sides, hardliners rejected any notion of reconciliation or reform. For them, the Watchers were either an existential threat to be resisted at all costs or an opportunity to seize power under the guise of divine judgment. As tensions mounted once again, another twist emerged, a second signal from the Watchers, this time directed solely at Earth. It was brief but unmistakable. Prove yourselves. Faced with this ultimatum, humanity found itself at a crossroads unlike any it had faced before. The corporations doubled down on their efforts to develop advanced technologies capable of countering any potential threat from the Watchers. Governments scrambled to unify their fractured societies under banners of solidarity and progress. And amidst it all stood the broker, a symbol of what could be achieved when humans and aliens worked together toward a common goal. In the end, it was not technology or military might that swayed the Watchers, but something far more profound: humanity's capacity for change. On Tvash Prime, humans and Tvash worked side by side to dismantle the systems that had perpetuated inequality and exploitation for generations. Together, they rebuilt cities devastated by war, not as monuments to power, but as beacons of hope for future generations. On Earth, corporations were forced to confront their own culpability in creating the crises that had brought them to this point. Some resisted change until the bitter end. Others embraced it wholeheartedly, transforming themselves into engines of innovation dedicated not just to profit, but to progress for all. And then, silence. The Watchers withdrew as suddenly as they had appeared, leaving behind no explanation or farewell, only an absence that spoke volumes. For some, their departure was a relief. For others, it was an unanswered question that would haunt them forever. But humanity, and its newfound allies among the stars, had learned an invaluable lesson. They were not alone in the universe, nor were they beyond redemption. As Earth's first interstellar ventures gave way to new alliances built on trust rather than exploitation, as humans and Tvash forged bonds stronger than any contract or treaty, the galaxy began to look less like a battleground and more like a canvas upon which countless futures could be painted. And so humanity pressed forward once again, not out of fear or greed, but out of hope. Hope that one day they might truly earn their place among the stars. Hope that one day they might prove themselves worthy not just in the eyes of distant watchers, but in their own hearts as well.